Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. Yes, the win-loss pattern is broken. Oh, the atmosphere at the final whistle yesterday at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, it was like an exorcism had been performed, Half expected that little lady from the Poltergeist movies to walk out into the middle of the centre circle and just go, "This house is clean." It was that kind of feeling. It was like just relief on everyone. I think even the players as well in their interviews afterwards, you could just feel that finally this daft, unstable would be the word anyone else in the world would use. This unstable run has just finally come to an end, and it was the perfect time to do it. If you're going to do it in a big derby match where both teams are fighting for the top four, and Spurs played well. They were good as well. It wasn't even like it was I wouldn't even say it was I suppose, yes, you could say at points it was a tight game, but actually I felt Spurs controlled it for quite a lot of it. I should also point out, Jonathan Veal from the Press Association, he keeps reminding me that technically the Middlesbrough game, the FA Cup game, is recorded as a draw because Middlesbrough's winning goal came in extra time. But I refuse to officially acknowledge that whatsoever, as he well knows. But he keeps commenting. Whenever I put anything out, you'll see it on social media or Instagram or something. He pops up and has his little thoughts. That's just the relationship we have. He's a funny man. No, he is. We get on very well, as you can probably tell. I wanted to apologise just before I really get into the flow of things. Last week, on the last video, YouTube's notifications were going a bit mad in terms of it was putting out a link that was broken, I think, to the videos, which was really frustrating because I had people in the comments saying, "It's not working." And then I was clicking on it and it was working absolutely fine. I think it was a notification issue. I know this has done this sometimes in the past when it almost sends out the notification too early when it hasn't properly processed. So you guys sometimes can't hear me to begin with. Whereas by the time I click on it, it's absolutely fine. So if that happens again with this video, please just go kind of directly into YouTube to watch it, or go straight to my channel or whatever. It should hopefully allow you to watch it properly. Because, yeah, that was a bit of a pain in the backside for a lot of people, I think. And for me, trying to work out exactly what was happening. But I think it was just something went a bit wrong with the notifications. I think that's all it is. But away from me and back to Tottenham. Because they're far, far more the most important thing. I think the key thing about this game was that Conte said afterwards he enjoyed watching his Tottenham players, and he said that to him before the game. He said, "I want to enjoy you playing," and that's exactly what they did. David Moyes came out afterwards. I've seen different quotes to the ones in the press conference. He was kind of saying, essentially Spurs had that little bit more quality, especially with Son and Kane. I've seen another quote. I don't know whether he said it because I can't verify it. He didn't say it in the press conference, but I saw a quote there. He was saying something about it was tight. And that they just it even said that they didn't create many chances and they tried to catch us on the counter, which, yeah, that's not true. Spurs had more in possession. They had 17 shots on West Ham's goal. Probably should have scored more goals than they did. So if that was a true quote, again, it might not have been. It might be. Sometimes Twitter does that. Strange people on Twitter just put things out there that aren't true. I certainly know that because I get that at the odd times because they shove my name after it as if I've said something, which is very weird. Or even they pretend to be me. I have no idea why anyone would want to do that. But yeah, Conte said that, he really wanted to enjoy the game, and he did. And I think that's because this is more and more like an Antonio Conte Tottenham Hotspur. I think it's as simple as that. I think the blueprint that he's kind of laid out is starting to be adhered to. And we're seeing that. I think I said that in the last video. Even with the Man U match, it wasn't actually a bad performance. You could see the performance was improving as well. Obviously went to Brighton in midweek as well. And Spurs controlled that. Lloris didn't... Brighton didn't have a single shot on target. Lloris didn't have a thing to do. And against West Ham, for all of, if David Moyes was saying it was a tight match, I think pretty much their goal was the only time I can remember Lloris having to do it. He had to make one kind of diving grab at a second attempt at a cross that came to the box. But other than that, very little came his way. I think that's what Spurs are doing. It feels like they're tightening up. We're going to talk about the goal they conceded because that's frustrated a lot of them, and it frustrated Eric Dier. Put out his quotes earlier if you haven't seen them. And but on the whole, they just tightened up from that one set piece. That would have been 4 clean sheets in their last 5 Premier League games, which would have been huge. And shows a long way they're coming. And also the midfield coming together, which we'll talk about as well. And it's all looking so much better on the table. Yes. Premier League table, 5th place, 3 points behind Arsenal. That goal difference has gone from, -1? Was it a couple of weeks back, I think? And now it's 11. It's 2 off of Arsenal's 13 goals. And it's better than United's, West Ham. Yeah, but United, West Ham and Wolves have all got less goal difference. It's like, it's like those Leeds and the Everton results just turned it round. And now Spurs are building on it with these, 2 goals at Brighton and 2 goals difference as well against West Ham yesterday. And it's just all adding on. And when it comes down to the tight, real nitty-gritty, you want that goal difference on your side. And obviously Arsenal have that game in hand, but we know very well that it's still to be rescheduled. Arsenal have to come to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. So it is heating up. And I don't know about you guys that, like me, would have followed Spurs many years ago, but we used to have those seasons, and I'm sure you'll remember them well, when by March, Spurs had nothing to play for. And when I say nothing, I mean not even silverware. We're talking about the league. You knew Spurs were kind of mid-table, and that was it. And it was just like, ugh. Obviously, that kind of changed with pretty much the Martin Jol era. After that, Spurs have pretty much always had something to fight for in the final month or two. Whatever it may be, at what level, what mantle within the Premier League. But it feels now like Spurs are properly in it and they've got something to fight for. And it's so much better. Of course it is. I just love the fact that there was a lot of pressure on yesterday's game. A lot of pressure on the players. Great atmosphere. The fans absolutely turned it up when they needed to. Conte had asked for that before the game. He said, we want them to be the 12th man. It's the old cliche. This is the one we need. We really need the fans behind us on this. And they did. Spurs fans were magnificent. The noise was superb. And it lifted the players. A lot of the players in interviews have said about the atmosphere. It just plays a role. It really does. It needs to be an intimidating place to come. And I'd say it's 90% the players. Of course it is, having to perform on the day. But there's that little 10%, I think, where the fans have their part to play. And they were superb. Absolutely superb yesterday as well. So, where do we start? It's terrific to actually have some really positive stuff to talk about and not really many negatives. So you won't hear me ranting too much in this video, which might be a good thing. Some people might like to hear me rant. The crowd was 58,685 yesterday, by the way. I wrote that down. It was an interesting one. It's another one where it's a sellout, yet for some reason those last few thousand aren't there. Whether that is just people that couldn't turn up on the day, whether West Ham didn't sell their full allocation, I don't know, actually, to be honest. I might be saying that wrongly. I genuinely don't know whether West Ham took them all. Or whatever that is to do with it. But I find that interesting. It's definitely a sellout. So Spurs are saying, and so some people have been telling me trying to get tickets can't get them. Maybe they're just not going to the right places. But either way, big attendance, and that's good. West Ham had 6 shots on the day. I think it was it just the one on target? I think it might have been the one of the goal. Again, for me, I know I don't want to go too much into this, but I just love that attacking trio right now. I love it. I love the balance. I love the way they complement each other. Dejan Kulusevski, another very good performance. He just looks like he's going to make something happen all the time. I was having a good chat about Brian Hill with someone ahead of the game. I can't remember who it was now. I think it might have just been someone from Spurs. And it's just like, I really like Brian Hill, and I think he's going to be a top player. Whether it ends up being in the Premier League or not, I don't know. But there's no denying that Kulusevski is absolutely ready-made for the Premier League. And he's proven that. It doesn't even have to be a statement. It is there in front of your eyes. And I just love the way he plays. I've just started to watch the Amazon All or Nothing Juventus documentary, so I'm intrigued to see. I've been told that there's quite a bit of him in there. Paratici's already popped up a few times, so I'm only kind of just halfway through the first episode. But he's just such a talent. I keep forgetting he's 21. You look at him and, he did a good interview before the game. Dave Heitner from The Guardian was one of the guys that was in on the interview. I think there was 3 of them. I cannot remember the other 2 were. But have a little look for it on The Guardian even. Dave Heitner's interview is really good. It just shows that he's a clever chap. I think he speaks 4 languages as well. I think his parents are from North Macedonia, I think. And his girlfriend is like the subject of some reality show, and you'd think that would maybe be the more mundane question out of the lot, but actually the answer to that is quite interesting. I love stuff like that. It really humanises players. Sometimes we put them on these pedestals or we slate them, whichever way you go, and you just see them as, maybe people see them as the people they see on TV playing football. And I love these kind of interviews where you start to get a little bit behind their football lives. And that's, hopefully, if anyone's ever read my interviews with players and stuff, that's what I try to do, is just to get a little bit more so you understand a little bit more that they're not just these guys, these robots, these FIFA characters on the PS5 or whatever. But yeah, no, look it up, it's good. And he was really good, and he just frees up Son and Kane, I think, to do what they do best. And I know I've said this before, but I think it was just evident again yesterday that Lucas Moura has done a lot of terrific things for Tottenham. He does. But when he's in that attacking trident, I don't think he creates as much for the other 2 players. And that is borne out by the stats. That's not just my opinion. If you look at his stats, assists just haven't really been his thing. Whereas I just feel like Kulusevski slots in on that right-hand side and makes things happen for the other 2. And I think he will get a lot of assists as, especially next season when he's full. Can you imagine him with a pre-season under Conte? Ooh, exciting stuff. It really is. But I don't want to go on too much about Kulusevski because I did a lot in the last video. Let's talk about Sonny, because it was brilliant. Sonny, by the end of the match, that was the old Sonny back with a bang. Conte had said before the game that he'd be crazy to drop him, and I think I said that in my last video. I wouldn't drop him. I wouldn't put him on the bench at all, because it's Sonny. And I think the biggest kind of tip of your hat you can do to Sonny is that when he hasn't been playing well, he still comes up with a goal and assist. I think I read out the stats last week. I can't remember what the numbers are now. But even, you look at a period of form, I think the phrase I maybe used was something like, if that's being out of form, I'd love to be that out of form, because he just still contributes with goals and assists, even when his confidence is low. But what I loved was, just as yesterday's game wore on, you could see his confidence coming back. And at that end, that roar when he scored that second goal, that was Sonny. It was a relief about the team, because I think Sonny is a real about the team player. I think that's one of his best aspects. And I think maybe it's in the quote I'm going to read you in a little bit from Conte as well. But I think I love that about Sonny, is that his first thought really is about the team. And I think there was a lot of relief in that roar about that. But I think there would have been a little bit of relief as well for him, because he knew that was a big moment. And it was like I've said before about Sonny, instinctively, even when he's got low confidence, instinctively he will score goals. But when his confidence is low and he's got that little bit extra time to think about, he'll run through maybe on a one-on-one. That's when it doesn't quite work for him. Whereas I thought the fact that he ran through, and actually, I think we were all pretty confident he was going to score. And that just showed the shift, maybe in the thinking of everyone around him, but also in him himself. And it was a lovely finish. Let's start straight from the start, from the first goal. He pressured Zuma into that mistake, really. Zuma, who was booed throughout for, his bizarre and very unpleasant cat incident. But yeah, obviously first goal, Matt Doherty, terrific pressing down the right that brought it in the first place. Then Kane gets to the byline and puts in that low ball that Sonny just, it was either going to be him or Zuma. And Zuma decided, nope, I'll gift you a goal. And he did. So that was good work from Sonny in that. Then they had the moment where Kulusevski, this is exactly what I'm talking about in terms of like setting up Son and Kane, was he played a 1-2 with Kane, didn't he? And the ball kind of bounced up, but he managed to take it down with his volley. It kind of instantly, as soon as the ball dropped, he knocked it inside to Sonny. What I would say, to be fair to Sonny, it was slightly behind him, but he still managed to kind of guide it towards goal, but obviously hit the post and went away. Then he had, of course he did, then he scored, which was a brilliant Kane ball. It was another one of those defence-splitting superb balls. And with Sonny, he got a little bit of luck with it, I think. I think with that goal he did, because I think it hit Zuma again, didn't it? It kind of deflected up and away. By all means, his original shot may have gone in. I don't know. But he got that little extra kind of... it's like kind of made it loop slightly, which took it in. So that was another goal for him, or a goal for him on the day. Then... it was an interesting one. I wondered at that point whether his confidence still wasn't quite there. Maybe it's because of that deflection. I don't know. Obviously, after he scored that goal, he did the shushing thing about, obviously, some fans have been saying drop him, which, as I've said before, I think was daft. It's just too good. It's too much of a big player, a big game player as well, a player you can rely on to do that. It did have a little bit of a kind of a little dip in the game when he had... obviously, the corner, which was Matt Doherty's fault to begin with. He had a bit of a weird stumble and ended up putting the ball out himself. But then Son, it was a strange one. He seemed to initially be starting to track the run of Craig Dawson, which I have no idea why he would be tracking him, because he's a big burly centre-back. That is not his man to go for. And I think he almost realised, like, crap, look at Said Benrahma. And he went, and by the time he'd realised, Benrahma was in acres of space. And then, could Lloris have done a little bit better? Maybe. It's a difficult one. It's a close range, low volley, point blank. Maybe could have got a little bit more to it. I don't know. I'm sure as goalkeepers are always hard on themselves and they'll analyse that and feel he maybe should. But Sonny, I think that was Sonny's man. I think it was. I do definitely appreciate the fact that he started off with Dawson, but I don't think that really was meant to be his guy. He was at that back post. So you had that. There was a weird moment a bit later on in the second half when I can't remember which West Ham player it was, but they kind of knocked the ball towards Sonny as he was going to take a corner, and it kind of hit the back of his leg, and he fell to the floor. It was a weird moment. It was. I think it's one of those where, I don't know if Sonny was just trying to be clever, trying to win a yellow card. I don't know. Or can you win a yellow card? But you know what I mean. I just think it's one of those things that Sonny will probably look back on and go, yeah, that wasn't great. And then Reguilon steamed in kind of to protect him. Let's be honest, the ball wasn't booted at him like a rocket. It was quite a low-powered pass, let's say, which just kind of maybe slightly slapped him on the back of the calf. But yeah, it happens in football. It happens. I think it's probably one of those things it's out of character for Sonny. It's not the kind of thing he'd normally do. And I think he'll probably look back on that and say, yeah, I probably shouldn't have fallen over. But what he did then do, obviously, was the goal. And I think that was testament to the fact that he battled. And his movement, again, I know I've said that a lot in recent weeks, but his movement was superb. He was pulling West Ham all over the place. He's got this funny way of running, Son. It's a good thing in that he'll speed up, slow down, speed up, slow down. He doesn't just go at this one fast pace. You do wonder sometimes whether he would just fly away from people, but he almost kind of like draws them in, I guess, and then speeds away. And it's a really interesting running style. And then for the third goal, it was as route one as they come. It really was. Hugo Lloris, knocking it upfield. Harry Kane heading it on, and two central defenders for West Ham just for some reason were both trying to get the ball, and that just left loads of space for Sonny to run through. Very clinical finish right into the bottom left corner. It was great. It was interesting because I saw an interview with Lloris after the game he did with one of the foreign broadcasters. I think it was Tim Sherwood, Michael Owen in the studio. And they were asking him about that kick because it's not something that he normally really does, that big launch upfield. But apparently, it was Lloris had told the back his defence, go up a bit higher. I'm going to kick this long. And it absolutely worked perfectly. So actually, a goal born of the creativity of Hugo Lloris. But yeah, Sonny was superb. Really good finish. Took the game away from West Ham. That was it. You just felt the relief for everyone. Sonny's roar, the crowd. It was brilliant. And actually, he's now, those 2 goals have taken up to be the second joint highest scorer in the Premier League. He's got 13 goals. And is actually, if you look at it, he's got a better goal conversion rate than Mohamed Salah, obviously, who's the top scorer. He's got 27% goal conversion rate to Salah's 23%. So there you go. Another little good thing for him. And to be honest, he could have had an assist as well on the day, Son, because he he ran on and played in Kane, didn't he? Kane had that little, maybe slightly heavy touch and then knocked it into Fabianski. I had Sonny as my man of the match yesterday. I think, Kane, Bentancur, Romero also all had very good games and maybe were pushing for that. But I just felt Sonny was the man yesterday. I think that performance kind of defined the match for Tottenham. I do think it did. It was really good. And when he came off, Conte was just like, it was like one of those really funny moments. If you watch the pictures back, we could see him kind of, obviously he's not too far from the press box, you can see down there. He was almost like, I do one of those things. You know what like the crowd do when the goalie's about to take a goal kick, but he was waiting for him to kind of, I think it was Lucas who came on for him. He was waiting for him to pat his hand to do the high five and all of that, and he's just and then he just gave him the biggest. He squeezed him so tight, almost bashed their heads together, and it was just a really nice moment because Conte and Son have got a brilliant relationship. They've really got each other's backs. Conte will not have any. I spliced their names together, didn't I? Conte will have not a bad word said about Son, and I love that. I love it when a manager backs their players, and he did it for him. He gave him a massive hug. Fabio Paratici actually gave him a big hug and was talking away to him at the final whistle as well. Paratici and Son are always doing that. There's lots of videos and photos you see of them around the training ground having chats. A really interesting one. I don't know where that relationship seems to have come out of somewhere as well. But it was brilliant for Sonny. And I think I've got the quotes here because I reminded Conte after the game about him saying it would be crazy to drop Son. And he laughed. And because I said, you said it would be crazy. Was this the perfect example of why you were spot on? And he had a, had a proper laugh about it. And then he said, essentially saying that it's a sign of his quality of the way he's managed this last period. He said it's always very difficult when you have an important player and you know very well that during the season there are different periods and sometimes you have a lot of confidence and everything you try to do on the pitch you're able to do, and sometimes the confidence can go down. But the important player, the top player, is good at managing this moment. And with Sonny, you're talking about a really, really good player who is really, really top. An important player, but at the same time a good person. He suffers if the performance is not good, but especially if we don't get 3 points. I think this must be our first thing. Not to think to yourself, but to think for the team. I'm playing not so good, and it's a pity for the team, not only for yourself. But I repeat about him, he's an important player for us, and he showed today that he's an important player. And I've seen a lot of links between him, Harry, Kulusevski, and also with Lucas, Steven Bergwijn, and we're working a lot on that aspect. You can see that. Spurs are creating so many more chances. Their XG and all that sort of stuff must just be off the chart compared to where it was under Nuno. It has to be said, it's under Nuno. Sonny was excellent. It was superb, and it's lovely. I was watching some of his interviews after the game, not only with the club, but also he did a couple of kind of broadcast ones that I've seen as well, and he's just smiles on his face, and it's superb. It's great. He was at the end of the game, he's like a smiling assassin. He is. He's just such a happy, good guy, and but he can kill you, as in he can kill you as a team in an instant. So yeah, I'm going to stick with that. The smiling assassin, I like that. Interestingly, in that answer to me about Sonny, Conte also just unexpectedly and unprompted decided to also big up Dane Scarlett. So after he said that about, we're working on that aspect, he said, I'm seeing a lot of improvement today in Scarlett. Honestly, I have to tell you that. Seeing this guy is improving a lot. He's only 17 years old, but I can tell you that he's a really important prospect for Tottenham. He has to be patient and work behind these very important players and continue to work in this way. Because about Scarlett, I can tell you that I see a brilliant future for him. That's a huge pat on the back for Dane Scarlett. He's had that from Jose Mourinho as well last season, and now Antonio Conte. So two of the most trophy-laden managers in the game have both said, this kid's going to be utter class. And I love that. It was like, my question was just about Son. I didn't ask anything about Dane Scarlett. And I just presume that Dane's had a really good week in training, worked really hard. He's on the bench every week now, which is, in itself, is a big thing for a 17-year-old in the Premier League. Yes, we know it's partly because of Spurs' inability to sign another striker, but still, I thought that was a massively important pat on the back, and just to kind of remind him, look, don't worry, I know how good you are, and it's about, you're gonna one day you're gonna be out there doing this kind of thing, and the Spurs fans are gonna be loving what you're doing, but you're 17, you've got Son and Kane ahead of you right now, so yeah, it'd be really interesting because if he is developing him behind the scenes, because obviously, Dane's he's very clever, young striker, very good finisher. He's just got to kind of work on his strength, his hold-up play. That's the sort of stuff he's got to work on, as all young strikers do. But if Conte is properly working with him and he gets a pre-season with him as well, who knows what kind of part he could play next season? He'll be 18, I think, by the time next season rolls around as well. Maybe a little bit more of a role to play. But that was big, a brilliant future. That was a really big comment. Scarlett is obviously for the future. Harry Kane is very much for the present. And I'm loving this Harry Kane we're seeing at the moment. It's kind of back to the Harry Kane of last season, but fitter, I'd say. He's still creating as much as he was. I think there was sort of stat where since the beginning of last season, he's got more assists than any other player in the Premier League. He's flying. He's flying again, which is great. His partnership with Sonny obviously is ridiculous, and that will be there whoever the manager is. And interesting, Kane actually, interesting, it might not be interesting to some, but he cut his hair pretty short. It was almost like how he used to look when he was a young player in the Poch years, properly short. And I don't know whether he played like a younger man, if there's a cliche there, but his fitness is superb now. Even at the end of games, you saw him kind of leaping for that header to set up Sonny late on. He's got the energy now. I think he said it's the fittest he's ever felt in his career, and that's what Conte's doing. I'm going to improve the Tottenham players, and he's even managing to improve Kane because Kane was lacking that fitness, and he's got it now. I've got some stats I wanted to write down there. So obviously Sonny and Kane now, it's 39 goal combinations between them. They already passed the record, and now they're just going to reach new heights with it. But also, in the past 3 months, no players have registered more goals and assists combined, as in combined individually, than Kane with 11 goals and 4 assists, and Son 7 goals and 3 assists. So that's even more so than the likes of Salah and people like that. It was that 15 goal involvements and 10 for Son. That low ball for Son is... you can only keep saying it so many times. He's like a De Bruyne and a Lewandowski kind of wrapped into one. It's just incredible player. He really is. But it kind of showed both sides, didn't it? Yeah, that pass, which was like the beautiful side of what he does as a playmaker. But then the header for Sonny at the end was like the physical sside, the dirty work that you have to do sometimes. And actually, Could have had a couple on the day himself. He'd probably be annoyed at himself in that respect. He ended up with 2 assists. Should have had 3 for me because I hate the fact that an own goal doesn't. I just hate it. I don't understand the logic behind why does an own goal rule out the assist that leads to it. What is the difference? You're still assisting a goal. I said I wouldn't rant, but that is something that annoys me every week. You think about the extra assists these players would have for playing exactly the same pass, that it just so happened that a split millimetre, someone else's foot has got in the way and put it in his own net. I don't know. So I just get myself quite annoyed there, so I'm not going to go down that route because that's just weird. But, he had a couple of chances himself, didn't he? Højbjerg played that really lovely chipped ball over the top that Kane just kind of got underneath and he lobbed it over the bar. Slightly panicked and rushed it, which is unusual for him. And then obviously, Sonny set him through, didn't he? And it was just, like I say, a heavy touch and then kind of prodded it into Fabianski's body as he went down. But no, it's a good one from Kane. Very good performance. And that's what Spurs need now. Because this is the key thing. We're in this period now where, other than the Arsenal game, Spurs are going to pretty much have a week of preparation before every game. Obviously, international break. Certain players are going to come back at different times. But on the whole, all of these games ahead, barring it's probably going to end up being the last week. We'd imagine the Arsenal game, as in the midweek. But, for someone like Kane to be fresh for every game, that's a big thing. And I think we'll see the best version of Kane in this run-in. And if you get the best version of Kane, you often get the best version of Tottenham. And if Sonny, we're getting the best version of Sonny because he's confident again. Let's not get too carried away. But it definitely is putting in the building blocks for something very good to happen. I want to talk about the midfield as well. I thought the Bentancur-Højbjerg partnership is really developing now quite nicely. Højbjerg does look a better player with Bentancur alongside him. Still, both of them will do the silly balls where they'll give them away, but it wasn't too much of that yesterday. To be honest, Højbjerg I've spoken a lot about and kind of stuck up for him when he was getting a little bit of flack. I thought he was good yesterday, battled well. Like I say, lovely ball for Kane. But for me, Bentancur was the standout in that midfield. He was so good. Oh, there was that moment which was... It reminded me of Moussa Dembele. It was one of those moments. It was beautiful, calm, composed and terrifying all in one moment. If you haven't seen it, Bentancur intercepts a pass, a West Ham pass, and he takes it back towards his own box. And 2 West Ham players, I can't remember who they are, kind of come towards him in a pincer movement. And he just spins around Dembele style and sends both of them in completely the wrong direction and heads off back up the pitch. And he played a quick pass and set up a Spurs attack. And it was sublime. It really was. And he's just like that. A lot of his passing was very quick, very thought out. It was like pre-planned. He knew where he wanted to play it. That's why sometimes I think he kind of gives the ball away, is that he's already got a pass ready in his head when the ball hits him and he hits it first time, and sometimes maybe that little gap has closed or something. But when it certainly hadn't for Spurs' second goal, wasn't it? He got the ball and just played his pass. It was so good. It actually sucked in Declan Rice, who tried to get a foot to it, realised he couldn't, but that left him out of position. Kane received it, turned, and then played an equally beautiful, if not better, pass into Son's path, and then the goal. So, yeah, Bentancur was excellent. I want to give you some of the stats on his one. 103 touches of the ball, 100% of his tackles won, 100% of accurate long balls, 100% of his take-on successful, and a 94.7 pass percentage accuracy with his 94 passes he made. And he also made 2 key tackles and 1 interception. It just settled in so quickly. And I kind of feel his calmness is contagious, because I think, and in a good way, sounds like a bad thing, but it's good in that I feel like the other players really trust him. When they're in a tight spot, they'll give him the ball because they know 99% of the time he's not going to waste it. And I think you saw that on a few occasions where Spurs are really getting better at getting out of tight spots. They're passing their way out of problems. And a lot of that has Bentancur at its hub. There was a little moment, I think it was with Romero down the right-hand side, where Romero and he kind of passed their way out of it. And even players like Matt Doherty looked far more comfortable in like a little passing interchange with him. he's he's a bargain buy. He is an absolute bargain buy. Yeah, it just settled so quickly as well. Him and Kulusevski, to adapt to the pace of the Premier League within weeks. I mean, Conte was talking about Kulusevski ahead of the match, and he was saying about him, it's like just in 6 weeks he can see what he's done, and he used the word. He said he's going to crack, and we kind of spoke to the Spurs press officer who said that he means explode. He's going to just suddenly explode onto the scene, and I think we're seeing that already. And I think Bentancur is going to be the same. I saw a kind of rare opportunity. I actually got to see Match of the Day when I got in, and I saw that they were bigging him up as well. So yeah, keep an eye. Honestly, I'm sure you will anyway, because you're probably a Tottenham fan if you're watching this. Yeah, the defence, like I say, they had that kind of. It's a shame they kind of protected Lloris for such a long period, but they just had that one set piece. And I think I had the stat here. 4 of their past 9 goals in the Premier League have come from set pieces conceded. So that's clearly something got to fix. Eric Dier in his interview was a bit annoyed about that as well. He said it's something we really are trying to work on. They were better on the whole from set pieces. Like I say, West Ham are really known for them, and the bulk of West Ham's set pieces didn't come to anything, but it was just that one, just a sloppy moment. Benrahma left at the back post and obviously puts it away. But in terms of a positive in defence, Cristian Romero. I don't know if you might have seen, I asked Conte about Romero on Friday ahead of the game, because he said something really interesting at the Amex on Wednesday night. He said about how he has to deal with Romero in a good and bad way. He said the manager has to help him in a good and bad way. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to find out exactly what he means. So I asked him, I said, what do you mean by that? And he said, he kind of went through all this stuff about how Romero was quite critical in a way. Constructive criticism. He was saying that, he needs to focus more. He needs to play the whole 95 minutes. He needs to not pick up the yellow cards, unnecessary ones he's picking up. And then he kind of circled back around and actually answered the question about the good and bad way. He said, sometimes I just have to shout at him. I just have to shout. He knows I'm doing it for the best for him. But ultimately, you just have to shout at him to get the point through. And I find that really fascinating, because he's that kind of guy. He's 23 years old, and he probably does think like, look at me. He's probably thinking, I am the man. I'm Serie A Defender of the Year last season. What else have I got to do? But at 23, a lot is the answer. You've still got to improve a lot. And I love the fact that he kind of came out and had that, responded to everything Conte had said. It was a big performance against West Ham, because, the yellow card thing is an issue. He's on 8 yellow cards in the Premier League. He's only going to get 2 more before the end of the Brighton game, when he's suspended for 2 matches. And if you were going to put your money on a game where he was probably going to get a yellow card, it would be a derby against West Ham. And he didn't. He didn't really ever look like he was going to get booked either. He showed like a real maturity, and I'm sure that will come. He's only just become a dad recently in the last couple of months, and I think just by being a dad probably wakes you up a fair bit as well. We've all been there. God, I was a proper plonker when I was young, and I probably still am at some points. But when you become a dad, you have to kind of grow up quite quickly, and I think that will be the same for Romero. We'll see, and. I know it's a bit of a cliche, but I think kind of had Antonio in his pocket. He really did for much of the game. Antonio really didn't do much at all that I can think of. He had one shot, I think he blazed over, didn't he? And there was one maybe put across the goal. But other than that, Romero he didn't get any change out of Romero, because in Romero he found someone that was going to battle him just as much. Romero's got this funny kind of way of like, okay, if you've got the ball and you're going to go away from goal, I'm going to come and I'm going to kick you. That kind of seems to be his thing. Or at least, if not kick you, I'm going to harass you enough that I'm going to end up with the ball. And he did a few moments like that. There was one terrific tackle in the middle of the pitch that he did on someone. He tracked them. I think there's a few moments where he did actually lose the ball, but to his credit, he went then and got it back and won it. And he was excellent. His focus was superb. Everything that Conte had asked for, it was there. So now he's just got to go these 3 games without getting 2 yellow cards in them, and those yellow cards will be wiped out. So Fingers crossed he gets there, because Spurs really can't do without him right now. He's playing that well. He's so good. The other slightly annoying thing, though, is that he's been called up for the Argentina squad, despite the fact that he currently cannot play in either of their World Cup qualifying matches. It's because apparently the Argentinian FA are confident that his ban will get halved, so he'll be able to play in one game. But the other kind of slightly weird part of it all is Argentina have already qualified for the World Cup. They don't really need to. You know, he came back from a big injury not too long ago. I don't know. Maybe we're slightly Spurs focused and we see it from that kind of view, but I don't know whether he desperately needs to be playing in these games. But I also appreciate that players want to play for their countries, and clearly Romero is very, very patriotic when it comes to that and representing his country, because otherwise he wouldn't have gone over there in the first place, which was what kind of caused a lot of the problems, didn't it? When he played against Brazil, and obviously that brought the suspension because of all the utter mess that also accompanied that. But yeah, everyone will be fingers crossed very much that he doesn't return with an injury, because I think 2 of the occasions he's gone away with Argentina, he's come back with injuries. So, well, technically, I think one was the one he arrived with, but still, you know, he hasn't got a great track record with coming back without injury from Argentina matches. It's either an injury or an isolation period. So, yeah, they really need to sort that. Oh, yeah, the other thing I was going to say as well, and I must admit, I didn't see it in the game either, but I've seen the video since. Mikel Antonio seems to do a very unpleasant forearm kind of smash on Eric Dier's cheek. Technically, that one. Which, yeah, I didn't notice at the time. I only saw it on Twitter as yesterday, when I got back in yesterday. Yeah, I don't know why that isn't something that maybe gets looked at afterwards. I don't know. I was trying to think maybe I'm seeing this out of context, because I really don't remember. Or maybe Eric Dier just didn't make any meal of it at the time. You know, Eric Dier, who really had like a black headband thing on because of the cut he had against Brighton, which really confuses all. It made it look like he had dark hair throughout the game. But yeah, it was a proper whack to the face. And only going off the video that you see, it kind of looked like it was done with, well, certainly off the ball. It didn't look like the kind of body shape you do when you're challenging for the ball. So whether the referee did see it and he mentioned it in his report and didn't feel it was worthy of something, and that's why he can't do anything retrospectively, I don't know. But it was very unpleasant. Really, really not a nice moment at all. And yeah, I don't know how I just completely didn't see it. Maybe because the ball went up the pitch and we were all looking at the other end, maybe we missed it. And then, like I say, if Dier didn't make much of it, probably wouldn't be a replay of it. But yeah, not great. Not great at all, that. What else did I want to talk about? The wing-backs. Like I say, Doherty in mixed game. He had really crucial to the first goal with his pressing. Had some nice moments in possession as well. Towards the end, he was pretty much, he switched to left, but he was almost like playing in the middle of the pitch. But he had that silly moment when he gave away the corner, you know, which was something that there's just no need to be done. Reguilon, again, this lack of confidence when he approaches the goal. He had a couple of chances where he was put through. It's almost, I feel like now, he's so lacking in confidence in what his end product's going to be. He'll sometimes maybe look to go down under a challenge, and I don't think it does him any favours. I think Spurs fans are getting annoyed about it. You know, just keep going and have the shot. All he probably needs is to do it once. Although, did he score? He scored. Oh God, you know what it is? It feels like we've had so many games and so many days. I'm losing goals, but yeah, it didn't impress me. Didn't impress me, Reguilon. I think he was probably one of the weaker players on the day for Spurs, I think. On a day where there were very few negatives, I just felt, yeah, he could have been a bit tidier in what he did. Oh, yeah, the protesters as well. Yeah, if you missed it completely, in midweek at the Everton game, was it? I think it was when they beat... was it Villa? I'm trying to remember who they beat with 10 men. But anyway, in the game, a protester came on and attached himself via some kind of, tags or whatever, to one of the goalposts, and they had to kind of cut him free. So clearly, I think it's like a climate change protest about oil or something. And clearly, all Premier League kind of games afterwards or any games were probably very well aware that these people were going to try that again. And yeah, I think it was 5 tried it in all. Certainly it was at the second half in the West Ham goal. 2 got onto the pitch, but to be fair, the stewards around reacted very quickly at that point and wrestled them away from those posts. Absolutely stopped them from attaching themselves. And at the other side, there was one who just got onto the pitch, that was dealt with very quickly. There was another one who tried to get on the pitch that was stopped. And I'm told that there was a third one at that north stand end of the pitch in the Spurs goal that couldn't quite get over the barrier. It's scary stuff because whatever what they're trying to do, protest or whatever, it's just scary that kind of people can get onto that pitch because it might not have been a peaceful process. It could have been someone, heaven forbid, with a knife or something. And it's really scary, that stuff. And I'm sorry, but at the moment you do that, you should never be allowed. I don't think you should actually be allowed in a football stadium ever again. I don't think you should, because it could be such a serious thing. It's horrific. I always think back to in the tennis and Monica Seles and what happened to her. And it's just, honestly, it shivers down my spine kind of stuff. It's probably the wrong choice of words, as she was stabbed in the back, but yeah, I didn't like it at all. And it worries me whenever I see stuff like that. We've had it in some of the matches. Was it Grealish? Someone ran on and clomped him. There was another game where someone was celebrating and a fan ran on and whacked them. Don't like it at all. And to be fair to stewards, I saw some people on Twitter say, they should have stopped them, like the later one did before they even got on the pitch. But it's difficult. Some of the stewards are covering a large area, but the fact that they stopped them doing what they intended to do is the important thing, I think. Very weird. But back to the football. It was just such a lovely end to the game. Sonny made sure that those final minutes Spurs were throwing themselves. I actually thought Spurs were going to score another goal. Lucas and Bergwijn came on. They were both flying forward. And just kind of Conte's name was being sung around the whole stadium. He was turning, applauding all corners, and it was good. It was good. That's what we want from Tottenham. It just feels like it does. It feels like this is Conte's Tottenham now, and it feels like they're going in the right direction, and it feels like, feels like things are coming together, and I just hope the international break doesn't interrupt that because. It is. If Conte can get Spurs into top 4, it could be one of his biggest achievements as a manager. I really do think that. You think about how fragmented and broken and depressed the club was when he arrived. If he could do that, wow, it would be a real feather in his cap. Some of the quotes. Actually, it's a bit story time with Alistair. It's quite a long quote. It was when he was talking about when I said he was talking about enjoying his time at Tottenham. This is a good one to show that. I'm enjoying a lot the work I'm doing with these players with Tottenham because for sure I've taken this moment a level lower than the top team that there are in this league, but I'm enjoying a lot to see the improvement. Today, honestly, I said to my players, I want to enjoy seeing you play football, and now I am seeing we are a really good team. Now I'm ready to play every game and to play against every opponent. I'm sure that today it is very difficult to play against us. I've seen great improvement about the mentality, but also technically and tactically. About the mentality, we're starting to understand how to manage 95 minutes in a different way. And today, when West Ham tried in the first minutes of the second half to try to push us and increase the intensity, we overcame this period and controlled the game. This means we're improving also the mentality and to understand the importance of winning the game, that you have to manage many parts of the game. I'm seeing a lot of improvement. I'm happy for my players because the staff and we've worked very hard and tried to push every day the players because the only way to improve the team and the level of every single player, and it has happened in Tottenham because the level of every single player is improving, and in this way the team is becoming a strong team. And actually, it shows his confidence in the current team that he actually also said, kind of alluded to the fact that he wished he could play Chelsea again in a way to measure how far Spurs have come since those 3 games in January. Obviously, they lost all of them and never really looked like they were going to put a glove on Chelsea. And he was kind of like, almost like, I wish I could play them again. We'd show them. And it's true. You're seeing this. We saw it in the performance against Man City and in the big games as well. And this was another big game. Yes, of course. West Ham had a brilliant night for them in midweek on Thursday night against Sevilla. Going through to the quarterfinals. But what I would say is, I think West Ham would then struggle maybe as the game wore on. But I actually felt Spurs took it to them in the early stages when they were fresher. So I think it was just a comprehensive victory. It really was. And I can understand completely where Conte is going with what he's saying because, it's it's a different Tottenham team even from those Chelsea games in January. It is. You can see where they're heading, and that's probably the most exciting thing. And these are the kind of things that, added with some ambition in the summer, these are the kind of things that will keep Conte, I think, at the club next season. I'm not saying that's definitely happening, but I'm saying these are the kind of things that would. Because if he can feel that the club and the team is responding to everything he's saying, and then on top of that, if he feels that he's going to get back to the transfer market and can only make them even better, what more can he ask for, really? Tottenham are a club that, if it's done right, and you're not going to get many managers that are better at Conte at winning trophies, and especially leagues. If it's done right, everything's in place at Spurs to step up another level. If they show the ambition to make themselves step up that other level, it's all there. And now it's just annoying that the stupid international break has come at a time when Spurs have got real momentum. Conte gets to have a little bit of a rest. He's going to head over to Italy now for a few days to be with his wife Elisabetta and his daughter Vittoria. Because if you're not aware, I think I've said this before, but if you're not aware, he's got this scenario which is, as a dad myself, I know how difficult this must be, but his daughter, I think she's 14. Yeah, I think she's 14, Vittoria. So she's still at secondary school in Italy. And they just kind of felt it's right at that moment where she's getting towards the end of her secondary school time, and it would be really disruptive to her education to take her out and bring her to an English school. So they've kept her there. So his wife Elisabetta has stayed there with her, and so essentially, he's kind of having to see them, I guess, over whatever video calls and stuff like that. And then as much as they can, he'll pop over there on a day off, which there are not many at Premier League clubs. There really aren't. Or they'll come over and stay with him whenever they have kind of time off. I think we saw that was a couple of weeks back. They were in the stand watching him. But yeah, so he's going to head back. I think, actually I've got the quote here so you all know. I think they're going to have these couple of days after the game, so I presume that'll be Monday and Tuesday off. And then they'll come back and do a bit of work, and I presume they'll have next weekend off. That's normally what they do in the international break. The middle weekend they have a weekend off. Those players who aren't going international duty, and presumably Conte will also go back to Italy again as well. And then they've got to start preparing for the game against Newcastle. Yeah, the quotes here, I've written them down. Honestly, it's a pity to have the international break because in this moment we're in good form, in a good moment about the results, the performance. But I know very well there's an international break. And with the players that have to go with the national team, we'll see them after 9 or 10 days. But with the others, we're prepared 2 different situations of rest. Before, they'll have 2 days to rest and then work. And then another 2 days to rest and start work again. But for sure, we want to try to exploit this period for those not going with their international teams to try to continue to improve on the technical and tactical aspects. It is, it's a really good time. He doesn't want to lose this momentum. There are positives from the 2-week break. Oliver Skipp finally asked about him and got some positive news ahead of the game. Conte said that he's starting to feel less pain. And he said he'd be back after the international break. So I kind of pushed that a little bit and said, do you mean actually the Newcastle game? He said, let's see. We need to see how he responds over the next couple of weeks. So fingers crossed that gets fixed because... Yeah, I'm intrigued to see what happens when you throw Skippy back into the mix. What that midfield looks like, whether he goes with a 3 sometimes, I think definitely Skippy will probably be the first sub that comes on in those first few games he's back. I think he will very quickly try and find a way to get him on, especially if energy levels are flagging, because he loves Skippy. He really does, and he trusts him. So, yeah, hopefully that means him. With Sessegnon, I think he said on Friday that Sess is going to be 4 weeks before they can do a scan. But obviously, once you're through the international break, that's not really long until he'll hopefully be back as well. And that gives you another option on the left, especially with Reguilon not quite doing everything he can to impress. Sessegnon I felt was starting to get there. He was starting to find what Conte wanted from him. So you get that. And just in terms of general momentum, I think Conte is trying to spread his mentality to the team. I think you're seeing that. You're seeing players acting, and I think, like you said in his quotes, the key way is managing the game. Spurs have just started to manage the game. It's still early days. It's the first time they've had 2 wins in a row in a while, but they are starting to manage games better. And you look at the fixtures that are ahead, because, just look at April. Newcastle home, Aston Villa away, Brighton at home, Brentford away, Leicester at home. They're games that Spurs they're more than able of winning, and if they can, just put so much pressure on Arsenal. Because, Arsenal, their April's very different. They've got to travel to Crystal Palace, who are playing very well. Then they've got to face Brighton, I think that's at home. Then they've got Southampton, Chelsea, and Man United, all in April. So Spurs can really keep things going and keep flying and just pray for no annoying injuries in this international break. They can, I hate the term, put the pressure on, because yes, it's something that's used in a negative way with Spurs, but they can. And again, as I said before, it's all about stability, and whoever finds that consistency now in these weeks ahead will be the one who snatches that top 4 spot. But Spurs have absolutely given themselves a chance now, and they need to take advantage. I was going to do the loan roundup. I'll do a little bit of a loan roundup for you quite quickly. Giovanni Celso. He's got through into Champions League quarter-finals. He played a fair chunk of the game. Quite a surprise result, I guess. Villarreal winning 3-0 at Juventus. So they went through. I think they got Bayern Munich in the quarter-finals. He played against, was it Cadiz, I think it was yesterday. That wasn't great. I think they lost 1-0 Villarreal. But Lo Celso definitely is a main man there. Who else we got? So I'm going to talk about Tongan Dembele. Had a good performance as Lyon. They drew with Porto, which was enough to see them through into the Europa League quarterfinals. Yeah, I looked up his stats. They were good. They were good in attacking and a defensive sense. He had tackles and interceptions, but he also had dribbles. It was a good one. And he will play West Ham. Excuse me, got itchy nose. He will play West Ham in the, not him personally, the team will, Lyon. So he will be back in London next month. I think the first leg is in London. Then he actually was unused, I think, at the weekend. Who were they playing? Reims. They were playing at the weekend yesterday. He was an unused sub, presumably because he played the full 90 on Thursday night. Who else we got to talk about? Brian Hill played 74 minutes for Valencia. They won 1-0 at Elche. He actually got another yellow card. He's got 3 yellow cards in his 11 games, which, for a guy of his stature, you'd kind of maybe be quite surprised at. I wonder whether he's just brought a bit of this battling kind of nature of being in England, and maybe he can't switch it off now he's gone back to Spain. I don't know, but I know it's not a huge amount, but 3 yellow cards in 11 games for someone like Brian Hill, who is... He's a little chap. He's not he's probably not the strongest player you'll ever see in your life. And I quite like that. I like the fact that he's probably showing a bit more aggression. I just found that really interesting. Pape Matar Sarr continues. If you think Spurs win-loss record is a very consistent pattern, Pape Matar Sarr's start a game sub is pretty much exactly the same. And this time it was the turn of coming off the bench. Mets were playing Rennes, who were third place, so it was going to be a tough game. Mets are second from bottom in the Ligue 1, and if you weren't aware, I think it was 5-0 when he came on with about 29 minutes to go. It was technically 1-1 in that last half an hour, so technically he came on and maybe things settled, but obviously Rennes may have just taken their foot off the gas. I don't know. It's an interesting season. in some respects, it's good for him to have got this experience of battling against relegation. That toughens players up. On the flip side, the fact that he's coming in and out of the team, he's playing every game. It's just whether he starts it or whether he comes off the bench in the second half. I just don't know how good a preparation it is for the Premier League. I don't know whether we'll end up seeing him going on alone for another year. Maybe to a club that just prepares him a little bit better for the Premier League. I don't know. We'll see. It may be that he's looked at in pre-season and he just steps up and develops very quickly. And the Premier League is just something he adapts to very swiftly. Hopefully it is. But Cameron Carter-Vickers, 2 wins and 2 clean sheets for Celtic. Honestly, probably the best loan spell of anyone this season. He's having a cracker with them. He really is. Troy Parrott had a tough day. MK Dons won 1-0 at Cambridge United. I always like to look up the player ratings in the local papers, and they said that he was a bit battered and bruised during the game, and just was a tough day for him. Jack Clark got praise for his part in Sunderland's 0-0 draw. I think it was at Lincoln. In the ratings I saw, was it in the Chronicle? I think it was that he did everything but score. Played really well. I think they gave him a 7. So that was good for him. And I should say, Troy Parrott's been playing very well. He has for MK Dons. Just a tough day for him. And he'll obviously go away with Ireland now and hopefully get more international minutes with them. Kiana Tete's still out at the moment with an ankle injury. Cheltenham boss, was it Michael Duff? It is. He was saying that he's just waiting. They're waiting for now Spurs to sign off for him to come back. Because if you're not aware how it works, when these young players go out on loan, they'll come back to Spurs sometimes for training, but definitely always for their medical kind of stuff. I think I saw a Tete either this week or last week at Spurs when I was there for one of the press conferences, which is lovely. We're back in person now, post and pre-match. They're just waiting for him to sign off to go back, where he was doing very well at Cheltenham. Niall John, that's still not going particularly well for him. He's not even getting in matchday squads at the moment. He was an unused sub before, and now he's kind of in a little run of not being in squads for Charlton. So, it hasn't been the greatest loan for him, but he's very young. Is he 18? It just hasn't really worked out, I think, how they'd hoped. Kakpa Kulowitz, I think that's how you pronounce it. I always murder it every single week. He's got an interesting loan deal because it's non-league. Potters Bar Town, who like Isthmian League level, they obviously don't train I think they train twice a week at that level. So he will train still with the under-23s, and he'll be available for Spurs development squad games as well. But actually, he wasn't involved in either of Potters Bar's matches this week. He wasn't even on the bench. He's been kind of essentially their bench keeper, which doesn't really do him any favours. A bit like Niall John. I don't think it really does a lot for a goalkeeper not to be playing. So whether he's come back and that loan has come to an end, I don't know. I'll have to dig a little bit deeper into that one, but certainly hasn't been in their 2 squads. Alfie Whiteman still doing his pre-season stuff for Degerfors out in Sweden. Their season starts next month, so that'll be interesting for him. I think he is expected to play every game out there. He certainly was until the final game of the season. I think he had a little injury, so he couldn't play. But he did his part in keeping them up as well. I think that's pretty much everyone. Yeah, that is everyone in the loan roundup. There's 11 players. Little England news I saw just before I started this. Carl Walker-Peters got called up to the England squad, which I'm very happy about. I was a big Carl Walker-Peters fan back in the day at Spurs, and that's great for him to be recognised in that way. I'm sure I had not a bet, but a gentleman's bet kind of thing, no money involved, with one of the journalists that used to cover Spurs, that he said Carl Walker-Peters would not end up being a Premier League player or play for England. And I think I said the opposite. I'm trying to think, the bet may have been a certain amount of games for Spurs, so maybe they were right as well. But yeah, really nice for him. It's good. I don't know whether that means there's any kind of financial thing. I have to ask about that. Sometimes when they make an international appearance, the club that sold them, there's some kind of part of the deal where they get a little something. So could work in that respect as well. And something else I just want to talk about is a bit of a sadder note. It's very much a sadder note. You guys and girls may not be aware of Paul Jiggins. Jiggo, as he is known to us. But Jiggo was a journalist who worked for The Sun. He covered Spurs for a fair while, I think a couple of decades. Unfortunately, he passed away. Absolutely shocked us. Died on Thursday. Only 50 years old. Got a wife and a young 19-year-old daughter. And to say we're absolutely all gutted is an understatement. It really is. You probably wouldn't know him maybe by name because he wasn't on social media. He, as he would always tell me, I wouldn't last 5 minutes on there because he just said what he thought. Funniest guy, loveliest guy. I can honestly say the biggest compliment I can pay him is that whenever you saw him coming, you'd smile. When you saw him walking towards you, you'd smile because you knew he was going to come up and say something that would make you laugh. And he was also, he just loved his intros. And there's one that I think I retweeted on the day. It's like, he's so clever. His intros, he always would look for a pun before a match had even started. And what I thought was brilliant is that, you know, when you work for someone like The Sun, you know, maybe you're associated with a certain kind of journalism, perhaps. But actually, Jiggo was so talented that he could turn himself to really tabloidy stories, but he could also deliver very insightful, clever pieces as well. Very clever guy. And the thing about him was he was just so generous to other journalists and such a good guy. Was always looking out for you, checking you were okay. When I first started covering Spurs in 2016, it was a big thing for me because obviously I'd grown up as a Spurs fan, but also my experience of covering football was non-league and League Two. When you cover a Premier League club, it's very different. There's little cliques among the journalists, the national journalists. Not all, but some can very much be a closed group. If there's a mixed zone interview, they don't really want you involved because, you know, they feel threatened, I guess, because obviously print journalism is very much, unfortunately, in decline, and there's this switch to digital. And there can be this... especially for a newcomer or someone that works for a website, this can be this almost slightly you're an outsider vibe. Jiggo wasn't like that. Jiggo, very much from the start, is very inclusive. He really kind of looked after me, as he did so many other journalists. Honestly, if you weren't aware of him before, if you go into Twitter and type in Paul Jiggins, you will see hundreds, maybe up to 1,000 now, of just incredibly nice and lovely comments about him through so many people that he's helped. He was a Millwall fan. You don't hold that against him. But what he did for that club as well, he would push every community thing they were doing, every charity thing, every person that needed a platform to promote a good cause, he gave it to them. You could sometimes hear him on TalkSport. I think they used him quite a lot as well. You'd hear his voice on there. Proper Cockney lad. And Millwall, funnily enough, they're wearing black armbands for 2 of their games, and they're actually naming their media suite after him. And Spurs did some lovely stuff as well. There was an address before it started. Anthony Marshall, Spurs senior communications manager, did a lovely little talk about him. Just said, you know, how we're all in shock, really, and what a wonderful guy he was ahead of the press conference. And during the press conference, there was a photo of Jiggo on a seat with a copy of that day's Sun there. And also at the game yesterday, there was a photo of him, a little candle next to it where he would normally sit in the press room. And very nicely, actually, in the press area, in the press box outside in the stadium, there was also this like kind of a flower that was laid down there. It was really classy. And you'd have seen that. Spurs tweeted about him. Millwall put out a bit about him. West Ham tweeted about him because he used to also cover all the London clubs. And anyone at those clubs would know Jiggo. You know, so many stories about being banned by Harry Redknapp for having a bit of a confrontation with him during a press conference. He'd upset players, but always everyone respected him because he's just a lovely guy. So, Paul Jiggins. Oh, man. Absolute loss. Absolutely gutted. Really am. And a lot of us journalists are. It's been such a weird atmosphere in the press conferences because we're so used to him being there. And he'd always ask the tough questions as well. Poch said some really nice things about him in one of the tributes I saw on the Football Writers Association. If you ever want to understand what Paul Jiggins is like, there's a Q&A that I think Dan Kirkpatrick and myself both retweeted. He did it with the Football Writers Association. I think it was in 2013. It is the funniest Q&A you'll ever see with any human being. And it absolutely summed him up. It's brilliant. Honestly, I really recommend having a look at it. It will make you laugh, whether you know anything about Jigo or whether you... just anything. If you want to get into sports journalism, it's a brilliant Q&A in that respect. But even if you don't want to, it's so funny. So yeah, Jigo, honestly, I'm going to miss him like mad. It's just such a funny, lovely guy. So there you go. Sorry to end that kind of on a sad note, but it just was something I really wanted to talk about because, yeah, I really, really got on well with Jigo, and we'd go away on all the pre-season tours together as well. So we spent a lot of time together. So absolutely gutted that he's no longer with us, and still struggling to kind of process it in my head. But now we have the international break, which is not the best. So what I'll do for the next video, I often do this in the international break, we'll do a Q&A. So get all of your questions into the comment section below, and I will try to answer as many as I possibly can in the next video, which will be maybe Sunday or early next week. I'll try to get through as many as possible. So yeah, whack them all in. And doesn't have to be about Spurs. I quite like funny questions sometimes. If you want to ask me about, I love movies and travelling and various other things, TV shows. So if you want to ask about that as well, feel free. I can mix it up. It doesn't have to always be completely about Spurs. But yeah, so we'll do that next week. This has been a long video. I'm sorry. Thank you if you stuck with me. Hopefully the notifications that went out for this video didn't give you any problems. It was easy to watch, apart from me being in it. And yeah, so international break. Fingers crossed no injuries or problems. And then we have the Newcastle game, which, yeah, it's going to be a different experience for me. I'm not going to reveal any more reasons why until afterwards. But yeah, I'm doing something slightly different for that match, which I don't think I can tell you about now, but I will tell you about afterwards, certainly. So a bit of suspense for you. So there you go. As always, honestly, stay safe, stay healthy, look after yourselves. Certainly this week, I certainly can only stress that message more than ever after losing Jigo. And yeah, I shall catch you later. Goodbye.